Welcome back to Mixtape Stories. Today we have Gabby. She is a mortician, and we're talking funeral songs.
Yes, funeral songs.
How's it going?
Good, good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on. This is something I think a lot about. I love the idea of a funeral playlist, and I've got songs in mind. I had a friend who passed away recently, and they made this really great playlist, and it was just every single song had a memory attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about wanting to leave my family with a memory in my funeral.
Right.
When it comes to like coming up with this type of playlist, like what kind of goes into like a good funeral song?
Man, it really depends on the demographic, really.
Yeah.
So like I picked one of them, Amor, Eterno. I hear that like at every funeral. Especially like in the West Side where I work, predominantly Hispanic. Like it's not a funeral unless that song is played.
Yeah.
So that's why I chose that one. And I like the meaning behind it. It's just like, eternal love. I also had a best friend who passed away. And I think that song is really special to me just because I still feel like his spirit with me.
Yeah.
And I didn't really believe in any of that until he passed away. I had this like spiritual awakening. So I guess the meaning behind it is like, eternal love. And I definitely feel him like from the other side. So I think that's why that song was special to me.
Yeah. I think that it's something that when you talk about like the spirit, there are certain aspects of things that like I don't want to say like I was skeptical necessarily as I just never experienced it. So it never felt real to me.
Right.
But then there are certain things like I've had certain people who have lost, and it's like, it's not even like weird things are happening so much as it is like a presence. Like there's certain things that just feel like a little weird.
Like different.
Yeah.
So when my roommate passed, he used to have an alarm that would go off every day at 5 a.m. And I would text him and I would be like, turn your freaking alarm off, And after he passed, he had a smoke detector right above his room. And so we had a party, people were smoking. So I took that smoke detector off and I just put it on the counter, because it kept going off during the party. And the days after he passed, that smoke detector would keep going off every day at 5 a.m. So just things like that. It was just really, really weird. So I felt like he was trying to talk to me through that smoke detector. It was really weird. But things like that brought me a little bit closer to the spiritual realm, which is unfortunate. I hate that I had to like find out that way. But I guess what it is.
It's nice. It's a nice memory and a nice reminder of the person that, who they were to you and who like they are in the grand scheme of like life,
Right.
It's really cool to, it's sad, but it's also like, it's interesting to hear these stories just because there's so many different intricate things. It's like when you hear stories from other people, it's not the same. It's not like, oh, like the door closed and this, it's always something very specific to that person.
To them. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you're talking about like demographics and like, when it comes to choosing the song, but is there a specific like mood, or is it like, is it more about lyrics? Is it more about music? What do you think in terms of?
So some of the songs that I hear a lot played at funerals it's going to be like if he was like, country guy, you hear a lot of George Strait, Cowboy Rides Away. Like that is like in there. Garth Brooks, If Tomorrow Never Comes. Some of that like classic country, like if they were like a cowboy, and then you have like guys that were like into soul, like they, all the lowrider dudes. So you're gonna have like that whole like lowrider playlist at the funeral. It just depends, because sometimes I'll walk into like a chapel and like it takes me by surprise sometimes because you never think, this person would have listened to this.
Yeah.
So, kind of funny too, but.
Yeah, I think that, I think you can tell a lot about somebody by playlists.
By their playlists, yeah.
And especially for this being like kind of their, it's like credits music, It's like this is their final credits. There's one song in particular that you have that is like perfect, like credits movie music. And listening to it, when I first heard it, it's a song that like I'm not as familiar with, but when I first heard it again, like listening to it, it sounded familiar, but then I was like, oh, like, yeah, this feels like strutting off to like the afterlife,
Yeah, definitely.
So you made a list of 5 songs that you like played at your funeral. This is one of my favorite like icebreaker questions. I have like a rotating list, and it's something that it's always fun to hear what people want to be remembered with song wise. The first song you picked was a cover of "Fly Me to the Moon" by Bobby Womack, and this is the most like unique cover of this song that I've heard because it's super funky. Like it's a really cool song. What made you decide to choose this song?
I really, really love soul. I love oldies. I feel like I'm definitely an old soul. I love Bobby Womack. And I think like I also love Frank Sinatra. So I think his rendition of it was just like perfect for like my, I guess, persona, my personality. Anyone who knows me knows that I love soul. I love oldies. So that song, I just never get tired of hearing it. Like it's so good.
It's so good, and it's also so unique in the sense that I was reading lots of people's like perceptions of it, or like little like articles about the song, and one person in particular wrote about how like they had to look up the lyrics again because they were almost convinced that it wasn't even a cover.
It's different, yeah. It sounds like a totally different song than Frank Sinatra's version. So I think that's what I appreciate about it too.
Yeah, there's like a little drag, and he was Bobby Womack was a guitarist for Sam Cooke, and this was from his first solo album. He was in the band with his brothers before, great guitarist, and apparently like the Sam Cooke's death really affected him.
Yeah,
and it's kind of fitting that this is as a funeral song because this was kind of his like catharsis to come out, and this was his like real like coming out party because it was his breakout.
Yeah.
This whole album, he has another cover on this album because the album is the same name, "Fly Me to the Moon," and he has a cover of "California Dreamin'" that's really good too.
Yeah, that one's also a good one. I was actually reading that Bobby Womack, he almost died, I guess, because his wife like almost shot him in the head.
Oh, really?
The bullet like ricocheted off of his head because she caught him cheating with Sam Cooke's daughter.
Oh, wow.
Which is his stepdaughter. She was 17 at the time. So I just read that the other day and I was like, wow, that is so crazy. I feel like Sam Cooke has this like, there was this documentary I was watching that there's this whole conspiracy around his death that he was murdered and not killed. And it was really interesting because he was going to be the first African-American soul artist to go like solo with his own label, and his label that he was signed to, like his manager was like, I'm not having that. So there's a lot of conspiracies saying that like his manager killed him so that he could have rights to all of his music. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Do you ever listen to Disgraceland?
No.
Are you into like true crime stuff?
I do love true crime. I've never heard Disgraceland though.
Disgraceland is true crime but music history.
Oh, okay.
It's really good.
I gotta check that out.
This one guy, I don't remember his name, but he does like these it's all monologue, just him by himself. He adds like eerie music here and there.
Oh.
It's really good. I think they may even have a Sam Cooke episode. But
I gotta check that out.
Yeah, it's really good. When it comes to you talked about how you like Frank Sinatra also. So Frank Sinatra's version is probably the most famous version, but this song's been around for a while, and I think I read there's about 300 different covers of it.
Really?
By 1995, there's about 300 studio versions of it. So this is a song that really stood the test of time, and it's a song that people they always associate with Frank Sinatra's version.
Yeah.
And this version, Bobby Womack's version, is just so different and so fun that I think that it's kind of underrated, and that
right? Yeah.
I feel like more people should talk about it, and just what he did with the arrangement and how he kind of made it his own is really cool.
Yeah, it sounds like a completely different song. I think he just has a great voice, naturally, and like you said, like his take on it was completely different to me, so I think that's why I liked it.
Yeah, he really moves around like the vocals a little bit. The lyrics kind of like they're a little bit not lazy, but they're a little bit like easygoing compared to the original and to Sinatra's version. What kind of vibe do you feel like this kind of gives at a funeral? Is it very like?
Oh man, it depends because sometimes there's like that somber vibe where everyone is just nonstop crying, and then you have like it's like a party, like people are just like having. I wouldn't say having fun, but they're like remembering them. I think when I go out, I just want to have something like that. Like I want people to share stories with me. I want them. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I want them to cry a little bit. Be sad that I'm gone, but I want them to celebrate the life that I had more so.
Yeah, I've always kind of looked. I mean, just growing up in the Catholic family and having so many uncles and aunts and cousins, funerals were like low key family reunions.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So it's one of those things where like the gift that this person gave us leaving life is reuniting everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
I kind of feel similar in a sense. I kind of like want it to be a little bit more of a memory
Memory.
thing. I think that there's so many there's so many funerals I've been to that have kind of just turned into like without the alcohol, just us like kind of around like in a circle talking about, oh, remember that one time?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that with music especially, you can really paint that picture. And then, like I said with my friend, like it brings in, like you said too, it brings back certain memories that are tied to these songs.
Definitely. I when I did my grandma's funeral, I think last September, and I was in charge of her playlist. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make this a really sad playlist. So I don't know, I guess it just depends on like person and the mood. But I was like, I'm just gonna make this extra sad. She was like the matriarch of our family, you know. So I did that. I also made my best friend's playlist. His was more like fun and like just like things that like a party vibe. So I guess it just depends, you know. We get like so many playlists that they start off like sad and then you have like Alan Jackson in there or like, you know, some random stuff. So I guess it just flows pretty good throughout the
Do you ever give advice to people when they're making their playlists or?
um no, I think the families like I've had families ask me to put together a playlist, like they'll give me the songs. But I always tell families like do what you think that they would want. You know, even if they're unsure about what to do funeral wise, you know, services, I'm like, what do you think they would want to do? You know, so I think that kind of guides them into deciding, you know, what they want to do.
Yeah, it's funny because in doing research for this podcast, it was interesting because I came across a lot of like there are funeral directors who have websites or blogs who have like this type of advice, like in giving advice and what songs to choose. And then there's a few that had like different songs from different bands, like top 10 songs from so and so. And it was interesting to go through that just to see like what their reasoning was for each song. I think that, you know, this is a great song I think to have on a playlist just because
Yeah.
it's light, but it's also very like calming.
Yeah.
You are like, you know, you've said this yourself, but you are like an old soul. And I on the way down, my parents actually had to give me a ride. I was like, hey, listen to this playlist. I think you guys would like it.
Yeah.
They were really into it. So
That's cool. That's
yeah.
cool. I know like my friends or people that meet me, they're always like surprised by my music taste because they're like, you don't look like someone who would be like into oldies or like, you know, soul. But I don't really keep up with a lot of newer music. Like those, you know, my cousins will be talking about like rappers, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, but I guess it's just yeah, that's the vibe I like to give. Like just very chill and mellow and soul, I guess.
Yeah. So the second song you had was "Kiss of Life" by Sade. Sade, I was telling my dad when we were listening to this, like she is probably one of the few pop artists who is probably like unanimously liked. If there are any like Sade haters out there, they're too ashamed to show their face.
Yeah.
I think you can't go wrong with anything by her. This song, I mean, everyone knows Smooth Operator and it's got this very like sexy, sultry vibe. This song is very like optimistic and it's about like, you know, having there was a review of the album that this was on. I gotta find the quote, but it was so on the nose talking about how she kind of goes with her music lyrically, especially, she kind of fluctuates between two different types of songs. Ones that are okay, so it's ones where love is flawless and ones where love is threatened, and this is where love is flawless. What made you decide to do this song?
I think just the message of it is like, you know, having that love that just brings out the best in you, you know, like you brought me to life type of thing. And just, you know, looking around, like when you're that feeling of being in love, like everything just seems so alive. Like you look at the sky and it's like, oh, it's so pretty. And like you know, I feel like even if you're having a bad day, you can put on Sade and like it's just like mellow. I had a friend who was crying like so bad, she was like having an anxiety attack, and I put on that like Love Deluxe album, and she like was like, "Wow, I feel okay now." And I was like, "I know." It's like I don't know, something with her voice, and like it's just very calming, and the lyrics mixed with her voice is just spot on for like I don't know, being like in that like in love, you know?
Yeah, it's very therapeutic.
Yeah.
I think that she has this like corner of pop music that, I mean, she kind of flirts with different styles, and there's a really like prominent saxophone.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like saxophone, as much as I love it as an instrument, it can be really hit or miss
Yeah.
because it can come off really cheesy, and
Yeah.
it's kind of played for that, you know. And you think about, there are songs that you associate with saxophones that are cool, they're good songs, but they're used in very cheesy ways, like in movies and
Like Careless Whisper.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was getting at. Careless
Yeah.
Whisper, even like in Dead Boys, or not
Oh,
Dead
yeah,
Boys.
yeah.
So when it comes to the way she utilizes it, it's still very like, I don't want to call it like elevator music because that's kind of a slight, and it shouldn't be, because it's just so calming. And I think that's kind of like, that has a lot to do with her as a person. I think she has a
Yeah.
very calming nature.
Right. Kind of like I would compare it to like Kali Uchis now. Like when you put on Kali Uchis, it's just like the same type of vibe. Like something in her voice just brings you like calming sense, you know?
Yeah, and I think this is why it's a great funeral song. I mean, it's
Yeah.
something that even like, even going beyond the lyrics of it all, it is very therapeutic, and it is something. In one of those lists I found, someone on Reddit was asking for like Pink Floyd recommendations for their dad's funeral because Pink Floyd was his favorite band, and someone mentioned "I Wish You Were Here," and then they like did like a pause, like this could be really like tear jerking though, just a heads up. And sure
Yeah.
enough, like even like reading that, even having no association with this guy's dad, it kind of made me like well up a little bit. Like, oh man, I couldn't imagine hearing this.
Yeah, it gets tough sometimes because like even if, you know, we deal with this every day, there will be times where a song just brings back a memory and they're playing it, you know, at the funeral, and like I'm like I don't want to cry, like, you know, I got to keep it together, but it definitely like hits different when it's, you know, in that atmosphere, I guess.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the show Severance?
No, I just saw something about that yesterday. It's with Ben Stiller, right?
Yeah.
No, I
Oh,
haven't seen it.
he created it, I think.
Okay.
But Adam Scott's the main guy. The reason I bring it up is because there is a scene of a character who has a funeral,
Mhm.
and they play a video of him playing Enter Sandman with his daughter.
Okay.
And it's so like beautiful because it's like them sharing a moment, and you're seeing them, and you could see him like so proud of her. Um, and I have no sad connotations of that song. Like, that song reminds me of like learning to play drums on Rock Band.
Yeah.
But watching that now, every time I hear that song, I like get a little like
It brings
emotional.
back, yeah. It's crazy how music can do that. Like it can take you right back to a place, to a memory, to a moment, like, you know, in an instant. Really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, with Sade, like, I just think she's like the epitome of cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any like memories associated with this song specifically that kind of?
I would think with my roommate too, just because of the connection that we had. And just again, like after he passed, like it's crazy how like after he passed, I got so much closer to like spirituality and like God, and I feel like I don't want to get emotional, but I feel like his death like really changed my life in a negative way and in a positive way. I feel like it made me better at my job, unfortunately. But now, like, you know, when I meet with families, I know what they're going through. Like, the minute I see them walk into the door, like they have that dazed look on their face, like they haven't slept in days. Like, you know, your mind's just going crazy. Like you haven't eaten or slept. Like, so you have more compassion going into it because you're like, I've been where you're at. I feel what you're feeling. So
I bet.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been to funerals where like I had an uncle who passed recently, and the like funeral, it was the pastor actually, like said his name wrong. He said the wrong name, and I've read people talk about like they got the years wrong, and they've
All that stuff matters to
Yeah.
families. It really, really
This
does.
is like the reason you're doing this is to have one last memory of them, and
Yeah.
it's just so frustrating.
You have to make sure everything is. It's like planning a wedding in 2 days.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, that's kind of like a sad wedding, but that's how I like compare it to is like you don't have a lot of time to plan something that is like a really big event. You know that people are they're either gonna remember it going off, you know, very, very smoothly, or they're gonna remember, yeah, they mispronounced my dad's name,
Yeah.
or you know, the obituary was wrong. So you really have to make sure that everything is like correct because you don't want to have like a bad memory for someone that's like a horrible feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think with like, you know, as a mortician and as, you know, I kind of compare it to like, or I think about it in ways of like, you see doctors who have to like desensitize themselves to death.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something that you feel you have to do, or you feel that the opposite actually works better for
I feel
you?
like the opposite works better for me. I mean, there's some, you know, funerals that there's some weeks where you're like, you know, it becomes just very like, how do I say, like routine, you know?
Mhm.
But then there's some weeks where it's like you want to cry every day when you get home,
I
you know?
bet.
So I think like having a sense of humor really helps. Like everyone in this business is like a little nutty. Like we're all characters like in ourselves. Um, and every single person I know in the funeral business has like a very weird sense of humor. I think that's how we make it. Like,
Yeah.
because you're not gonna make it if you can't joke around. Well, that's actually like one thing I really, really want to do one day is like write a sitcom like in the style of The Office about a funeral home because I feel like even though it's death and there's still a lot of taboo around death and there's a lot of funny things that happen.
I bet,
like,
yeah.
You know, so I don't know. I have all the characters and some of the stories. I just need to put it all together. And if someone wants to fund me for that, fund me.
Yeah.
Just hit my DMs. No, but yeah, that's something I definitely want to accomplish maybe one day. You know.
Yeah, I forgot you had told me about that before.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a good idea.
Yeah, because there's so much stuff that's like, God, this is so comical, you know, and it's like it shouldn't be that funny, but it is, you know. But I guess it's just you have to laugh at stuff sometimes because it gets too much, you know.
Yeah, it's funny because I had a friend who lost a lot of friends young in high school. It was gang life and stuff, you know, and or just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And one of their friends was like they had known each other since elementary school. He died in high school, and they all went to like CCD together. And the pastor was very familiar with them, and you know he was like a heavy drinker.
Yeah.
And at his funeral, my friend told me that the pastor went up and talked about he was an organ donor, so he was telling everybody what organs were going where, a kidney here, et cetera, et cetera. And he gets to liver and like pauses like for like comedic effect, and everyone's like, and he was like, it's going to a 6-year-old boy in North Carolina or whatever. He's like, may God have mercy on his soul. So
it's true. Like sometimes you just have to laugh at stuff because yeah, it's crazy. And the people that I've worked with throughout the years, they've really been characters. Like I remember one day I was about to take out a service, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no, this is all you.
but I was having like the worst, you know, morning. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong, and then the student was gonna go on the funeral with me. She was driving the limo, and before we're getting ready to go, and then I see her like crying like hysterically, and I'm like, "What's wrong? Like, why are you crying?" And she's like, "My hamster died this morning," and I'm like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "Get it together, like please." Like, I'm sorry about your hamster, but like someone's mom just died, you know? And I get it, like pets are like, you know, like your babies, but I was like, please don't do this to me right now. Like, I don't have anyone else to drive this limo. Like, just stuff like that. That's like, God, you know, like it's so comical, but it's just when things are going wrong, you know. But yeah.
Use that energy, you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So your third song is one you mentioned earlier, Amor, Eterno by Rocio Durcal.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know Juan Gabriel wrote this song.
Yeah, he wrote it in 1990, which is the year I was born. So that's kind of also why I chose it. Like that was the year I was born. And I hear that song at every Hispanic funeral. It's not a Hispanic funeral unless that song is played. So, and I think that song just speaks to me about, eternal love. Like, your loved ones go on, but their spirits are still here with us. So I think that's, showing that eternal love.
Yeah, it's got an interesting life. He performed it in 1990. That's when he like debuted his version of it.
Yeah.
He wrote it in 1984, and I think he wrote it for Rocio.
Oh, okay.
But it was about his mom who passed away in 1974 when he was like 13.
Yeah.
And this is, I think I saw it. It was like one of the top 5 songs played at funerals.
Yeah, that's definitely one of them. That, and then you have like you have a bunch of like Ramon Ayala, like all those Tejano hits, So that song for sure will be played though.
Yeah.
At any Hispanic funeral.
Yeah, I mean, it's got this long legacy, and her version specifically has kind of stood the test of time, kind of like Frank Sinatra's version of.
Yeah, it's kind of like Whitney Houston and Dolly Parton. I Always Love You. Like everyone goes to like the Whitney Houston version, even though Dolly Parton wrote it. Same.
Yeah, it was. So I was reading that in 2024, it was added to the National Recording Registry. It was it's in the like record books as one of the songs of what am I trying to say? It's one of like it's recognized as a national song.
Yeah.
And then Rocio herself was inducted into the Hall of Fame of the Recording Artists Hall of Fame. This whole like song, just reading through like the wiki of it, was just like award after award or recognition after recognition, and it's kind of turned into like it's almost like a folk song now. It's kind of like a song that centuries from now people are still going to be singing, kind of like "Oh Danny Boy" or something.
Yeah, definitely. It's a staple in the Hispanic funeral culture.
Yeah. When it comes to, I guess, like, are you fluent in Spanish?
I'm pretty fluent. I get a little nervous when I have to speak it.
Uh-huh.
It's weird. But when I'm drunk, I can like speak Spanish. But I think I just like lack that confidence to like speak back. But if you're talking to me in Spanish, I can understand.
Yeah, I'm a no sabo. So like for the most part, I think I do better than most of my friends who are no sabos. But when just in reading, especially songs in foreign languages, they sound so much better hearing them in that language. But I feel like even translated, this song is just so beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
That's usually how it goes with Spanish songs. Like the Spanish translations, sometimes they don't really make sense, but in Spanish it sounds good.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is just the way. I mean, it's simple like sentences, but even being so simplified, it has so much meaning behind it.
Yeah.
I think the fact that he wrote this about his mom, is a testament to like how much of the meaning went into this, and that he was really kind of going through it. And what other kind of Spanish song or other foreign language songs do you see a lot?
Rinconcito El Cielo by Ramon Ayala. There's Adios Adios, Un Dia a la Vez, like all of those like mariachi songs, like they're gonna play at the funeral, What else? Anything like sometimes Emilio, like Juntos, we'll hear that one a lot. That's actually a very beautiful song. The funeral home that I worked at actually buried Emilio in that funeral home. So we would joke and say like he was like the ghost of the funeral home.
It's a cool ghost to have.
Yeah, definitely. I felt his spirit there, but no. But yeah, definitely anything like Emilio, Ramon Ayala, any of those like Tejano bangers are gonna be played too.
What is a typical reaction for Amor Eterno? Like, is it more like,
tears?
Yeah, it's like a climax of tears, right?
Yeah, they usually save it to the end, like when we're walking out with the casket, and then that's when everyone just like starts sobbing, or they'll save it like at the funeral or at the cemetery when they're about to lower the casket, and it's just like
heavy.
water. Yeah, waterworks.
That's there's a certain song by La Mafia that like my mom always associates with her brother, and he's still like, my uncle's still alive, but he went through some troubled times and he was gone for a while. And I remember one New Year's we were like, doing the Mexican thing around a fire, and someone played that song and my mom was like at a loss. Like she was
Yeah.
like paralyzed in like emotion.
Yeah, it hits you. It hits you hard sometimes. But yeah, the lowering of the casket, it's always with that song. I feel like Hispanics like they want to be dramatic sometimes, you know, like they want to just let it out and like that whole like wailing, and you have to have like the perfect song to do it to sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
yeah, this is definitely the perfect song. And I just when you're talking about like lowering the casket, I see this like right as her voice is like crescendoing, and
yeah,
it's like how could you not respond to
it's
that?
rough. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
like passing out tissues, like yeah,
Yeah. I think with a lot of the songs that you have on here, I mean, this is obviously a staple. Some of the other ones that we will get into in a little bit, they they work so great, but they're also ones I wouldn't necessarily think of for a funeral. And I think that that's a testament to like your personality and like who you are. But also I think it's just a testament to like having something a little different. Like you've
yeah.
seen it all. Like I mean, how many do you know about like how many funeral processions you've
Oh God. Well,
managed?
next year will be 15 years that I've been in
Oh
the
wow.
business. Yeah, I've been licensed 13 years. I started really young when I was 20. So I don't even know. Like probably in the hundreds
I
has
bet.
to
Yeah.
be. Yeah. But I've mostly I mean I've worked in Austin. I've worked at more bougier funeral homes, but I feel like I fit the best on the west side. Like that's
Mhm.
like that's me gente, like my
Yeah.
people, you know. They're very like humble, like they're not hard to please, or they're not going to make like a big thing, rather as like, working in funeral homes that, bring in a lot of revenue. Everything has to be like, which I understand,
Mhm.
but it's like it's not what I'm like cut out for.
Yeah.
you know, I
Is
like I like dealing with like my culture. Like I've mostly been on the west side, and I feel like that's where I fit in best.
is there like I mean, just culturally speaking, like we talked about, they are more like family reunions. Is there a tendency to like kind of avoid any type of like stuffiness with on the west side particular or just in general? Like do you see more like stuffy types of funerals or like a very like tight knit, very like a better word, like sophisticated?
Yeah. So the funeral home I work at, we do mostly military. So about 80% of our funerals are at Fort Sam.
Mhm.
Um, so it really just depends, because sometimes, I don't want to like put anyone into a stereotype, but it's kind of like what it is. Like if the black services, like they don't really like to be in the funeral home a lot. So if they have a visitation, it's only going to be 1 or 2 hours the night before, and like no one's going to show up because they
Mhm.
don't really like to be there. It's going to be the next day is like when the big service is happening. Whereas Hispanics, like they're like, how long can we have the body out? Like 4 days, like
Yeah.
it's like. And then white people, are it's kind of just like very like it's hit or miss. Like I shouldn't say hit or miss, but you never know what you're gonna get sometimes. Very, I think that's the thing about the funeral business is like no 2 days are the same. Like every day is something different, a different family. You kind of have like a baseline, or like a guide as to like Hispanics are going to do this, but it can be totally different sometimes. So it all just depends on the family.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, depending on like from a religious perspective too, I have gone to some that are very somber and very like I don't want to talk above a whisper. And then there's
Yeah.
other ones where I hear like my aunt or uncle like
Like a
laughing.
party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that like sometimes it catches me off guard and sometimes it's just like no, this is just the way it is. And
Yeah.
um when you I mean not to like say like which one do you like more, but is there a particular one or does it depend on like how you're feeling that
My
day?
favorite are the bandito services. I took a bandito service out maybe 2 years ago. It was the biggest funeral I've ever taken out. Oh, at least like 600 or 700 motorcyclists. Like they come from all over. And I feel like there's this stigma around like motorcycle clubs that they're gonna be jerks, or like they're, which is kind of true, but they're like also very respectful. They clean up after themselves, and they get with you on everything, because they're kind of like, we're gonna do this, but you're gonna do this type of thing, and it's kind of interesting. But
Yeah, I've always heard like good things about like from a respectful standpoint. I mean, it's one of those things where you always see these. Who was there was like there was a protest against a gay person who died or something, and a bunch of like bike clubs came out and were just revving their engines so that the family couldn't hear the horrible shit that
oh,
people were saying.
see, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this doesn't have anything to do with motorcycles, but your next song is "Dreams" by Fleetwood Mac,
Yeah.
and this is a song that is like very fitting for, just from a vibe standpoint. I mean, it's a good. This is one of the ones I was mentioning as like a good outro, good
Yeah.
my life movie credits ending.
Yeah.
You know. I think with Fleetwood Mac, it's interesting because people probably kind of lean more towards like Landslide, or
Go your own way.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What made you decide to you choose Dreams?
Because I'm a witch, and so is Stevie Nicks. No, I think I love that song just because. First of all, I've never had like a really good dating life. I've always had some bad luck with guys, and I feel like that song is just like it ties so well into my love life because I feel like I'm always getting like my heart broken. Stevie Nicks wrote that song when she broke up with
Buckingham.
Buckingham.
Mhm.
I think she wrote it in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then he wrote You Can Go Your Own Way.
Yeah.
So they were very messy, but I just feel like that song is just it's so like I don't know, it's like a vibe, anyone who knows me knows that I love that song. I choose that every time I do karaoke.
Oh yeah.
Like, I do like a Stevie Nicks impression, but I don't know, I think just Fleetwood Mac in general is like just one of my favorite bands. So I think that song speaks to me just because of all of the heartbreak that I've been through and, the lyrics just match up with what I was feeling at the time.
Yeah, I mean, Rumors in general is like lauded as like the ultimate breakup album because you're getting multiple perspectives,
Yeah.
and then you're also like having the people who the songs are about have to sing it or play on it.
It's very awkward.
Yeah. But every one of those songs I feel is very fitting for someone's like outro to life, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because now a lot of people associate this with the dude from TikTok, Dogface.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's on, with the cranberries juice, and it's so funny because this song fits that too. Like it fits so many different scenarios, and it's rare for a song to fit that without having an extra connotation of like something else happening.
Yeah.
To like force you to feel that way about that. It's just like it makes sense. You see that TikTok, you're like, oh, this makes sense for this
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah.
You hear it at a funeral, oh, this makes sense for the vibe.
Yeah, yeah. So it's definitely on there. And I think just, the lyrics being, about heartbreak and then, at the end where it's like the rain washes you away, you'll know. So it's like that glimmer of hope.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, a lot of these songs from this era especially have that kind of like silver lining to things, and this is a song I feel like from a reaction standpoint could go either way. It could be very much something that it reminds people of a certain aspect of things. It just makes them want to cry and let it all out. And there are some parts of me that I feel like there's a situation where someone hears it's like, oh man, like this.
Yeah, it's like a spectrum.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I've definitely felt times where like I just bawl to this song, but then there's times where like I feel happy listening to this song. So I think that like encapsulates or my whole vibe, my personality.
Yeah. I just Fleetwood Mac in general is the type of band that I remember when they started kind of resurging recent, like in the last 10 years or so, even before that TikTok, and seeing like how many young people were into
Is
it.
that song? Yeah.
Yeah. And like that song, and even like, the others, Edge of 17, Go Your Own Way, all these other songs. And there was this like way to, especially for younger women, to like identify with Stevie Nicks, and even going beyond like the witchiness of everything.
They say like what she doesn't sing, she casts spells.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing like there was a TikTok of like a historically black college like marching to, I don't remember what song it was. It was it might have been Edge of 17.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and it was one of those things that I didn't even question it. Like, it wasn't even like me thinking like, oh, like is this something that is resurging in different cultures? Like, no, this just makes sense. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Fleetwood Mac, I think they're one of they have to be one of my favorite bands. So I definitely had to put them on there. It was hard putting it down just to 5 songs, but I was like, I have to have definitely Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles. I love the Eagles too. So.
Yeah, we'll get into Eagles shortly. That's another one that I wouldn't expect, but also listening to, I'm like, oh yeah, this rules.
Vibe.
Yeah. When it comes to the Fleetwood Mac as a band and being able to kind of stand the test of time, do you think that there's something to it? Do you think it's the songwriting? Do you think it's the story behind the songs?
I think it's both. I think a lot of, like, for me, I get that Stevie Nicks is so messy, but I've also been very messy sometimes, so I think just her being relatable, like going through heartbreak, she's just like a witchy girl, like I think their lyrics, I think the drama behind it too, and then, just being able to go through all that and then still produce music is kind of like wow.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where I feel like there is a thin line between like, are they getting through the drama to write this great music, or are they being fueled by the drama? Yeah. Either way is okay.
Yeah.
But like, it gets to a point sometimes when you're being fueled by it to where like when it disappears, like what happens then?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that they're just really good at kind of, I mean, this was, I think, right place, right time. I mean, not just them, but even the McVies were getting they were separated. Mm-hmm. And then the other guy, Mick Fleetwood, he was going through a divorce. So Rumors was just this like conglomeration of like, pain and sorrow and, and perseverance too. I mean, a lot of these songs are about persevering through this heartbreak.
And then like, imagine, you write a horrible, like not horrible, but it's a pretty like deep breakup song, and then you have to sing it every night with your ex. Like, so it's like that extra like stab,
It's always made me wonder if this was something that like, how do they process this? Like, how does Lindsey Buckingham process like playing this when he was back with them? And is this something where like, does he like just tune out the lyrics, or
right? He's like that Ben Affleck meme where he's like, on stage, like, he's like, here we go. Okay.
He's got the Dunkin' Donuts.
But I actually read somewhere too that they were gonna credit their drug dealer on the album, but he died, so they weren't able to. Yeah, but I guess it speaks, a lot, of what they were going through too, like.
Oh yeah, 20% cocaine was the inspiration.
Yeah, definitely.
I always like reading about just this era because, I mean, there's all these stories, of course, and they're all well-known stories, but there's just, it's fun to kind of like look and to see what they were dealing with. And like you said, she is very relatable, which is weird because she's a fucking rock star, and like being able to be that relatable and to like not feel the need to have like a flawless like persona to everybody else. I mean, I don't know if it's just that she didn't know any better, that nobody knew any better back then, or if it's just something that she didn't care about that, or she just wanted to be real, or if she just didn't even think about that at all.
Yeah, I think she's just like a very free spirit. She's probably just like F it, you know? Like, I think it's different, because like you said, like I went to see Wicked the other day and I almost walked out because I was like, the whole Ariana Grande thing. Like, if you're an Ariana Grande fan, I'm sorry, but it felt like a very dark vibe. Like her whole like she just seems like she's just too like it's fake. You know? Yeah? Like too, I don't know. I didn't like it, but compare that to like then Stevie Nicks. Yeah. So I think that's why. I relate more to her because I've been messy. I've been through breakups. I've been crazy. I've been called a witch, so, but I've not been like Ariana Grande. So.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I feel similarly, but in the opposite direction about Chappell Roan, because she's come out and she's like very like, if she has a PR person, they're like, what the fuck are you doing? But in the best way, because like she's I feel like she's being her true, genuine self, and it's so rare to see that.
Yeah.
And it's also understandable when people aren't. Like, I'm not gonna like fault like Taylor Swift or Beyonce for like not commenting on certain things because it's not in their best interest.
Right.
So Chappell Roan being so like off the cuff is very like refreshing, and
that's what I've heard. I haven't heard a lot from her, but the things that I have heard about her are all like positive, just because she's so raw.
Yeah, and the thing about it too is like, especially in like social media and TikTok has this tendency to like, I feel like there are people on TikTok who are looking to call out culture to become famous. So they're like looking for somebody to slip so they can call them out and
cancel culture.
Yeah. I don't even think it's cancel culture so much as that they're looking for a reason to like benefit from somebody doing something. And sometimes it is warranted and sometimes it's not. And I feel with Chappell Roan, the thing that with her is that she was talking about being harassed by fans out in public. And it was like, it wasn't like they were coming up, oh, can I have your autograph? And she was like, get the fuck away from me. It was like people following her like down streets and like.
That's too much.
Yeah. Like they'll like know where she's at based on like an Instagram post and like go to that place. And it's something that people I think are missing when they're criticizing her for like, oh, well, the fans made you. And she's like, I don't think she disagrees with that. Like, I think she agrees with that. But at the same time, she doesn't care enough about it to be like have to deal with the bullshit of being a celebrity.
Yeah, I get that.
It's a lot of Stevie Nicks energy in there. 'Cause I feel like she has that vibe too.
Yeah, she just don't care.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Eagles, and your last song was "One of These Nights" by the Eagles. This was a song that apparently they decided when people talk about like Bob Dylan playing like a Rolling Stone. That was his entrance into like electric music. That was his transition from being the folksy acoustic to, that era of being a rock and roll guy. Apparently this was that for the Eagles. They went from being like a kind of a alt country, even though alt country wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah, it was like a different vibe on country back then.
Yeah. So it was like they had these very westerny songs and kind of ballady stuff, and this was their entrance into like, oh no, we're a fucking rock band.
Yeah, definitely. I was reading that they actually wrote that song about it's mostly about chasing a girl, but also chasing your dreams.
Yeah.
And kind of like it's never too late to do either of them, I guess. But I feel like people kind of put a hold on their dreams, and this song is kind of talking about like, just one of these nights, like I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna find you. But yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I love the Eagles. I feel like that's probably my favorite song by the Eagles, and it's maybe not one of their more popular ones, but it's the one that I cannot stop playing. But the Eagles in general, like I just always have in the rotation. But
yeah, I mean, this was apparently the first of 4 straight albums to reach number 1 on the charts. One thing I forgot to mention about Dreams is that was, I think, Fleetwood Mac's only number 1 song.
Really? I didn't know that.
I think so. Don't hit me if I'm wrong. But I sometimes I like to talk about like the charting just because to talk about the significance. And with this song, it is, like you said, it is one of their lesser known songs, but it's also a song that is just so present that you know it, even if you don't know the name or even
the
that it's the Eagles.
like riff, Yeah, definitely.
And it is like the perfect like movie credit song. You talked about the fact that it's about like putting things off. Is that what you were thinking about for putting this as a funeral song, or is there another reason?
I think I just love this song. It's one of my like probably top 3 favorite songs. So I was like, I have to have that in my playlist, Even if people are at my funeral and they're like, I don't really get this, I feel like the people who really know me and love me, my close friends, are like, okay, yeah, this is like so spot on. And I think it's just one of those that's, like you take some shrooms and like everything, it just all vibes well. But I think just the Eagles in general, like all of their songs kind of have these like really like mystical lyrics, like Hotel California. I've heard so many different stories about that song. I read somewhere that they actually wrote it about a book. I forget the name of the book, but basically like a modern day Dante's Inferno, what the book is about. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I've also heard that they had beef with Steely Dan. So like there's lyrics in Hotel California that apply to like their beef with Steely Dan, which I love Steely Dan too. So I'm like, but yeah, I just think they're like lyrically, like they write some of the best lyrics.
Have you watched the Yacht Rock documentary on HBO?
No.
So apparently Steely Dan's featured heavily in there.
Really? I
Yeah,
gotta check that out.
I've heard good things. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard good things about it.
I gotta check that out.
But yeah, I mean, I think I mean everyone associates the Eagles with Hotel California, but then you forget like, oh no, they had hits. Like they had their Hall of Fame, their greatest hits record, Hell Freezes Over, I think is what it's called. That was number one, like the number one best selling album of all time for a while.
Yeah, they just did like 2 shows at the Sphere actually.
Oh really?
Yeah, I was like, oh, I wish I could go. They had one in October and they're having one coming up in December. But yeah, imagine seeing the Eagles at the Sphere. Like that's probably amazing. But no, definitely, I feel like they're just like they're timeless. I don't know. I think that they're. I guess when you think of, I don't even know what like kind of genre to put them in because you want to say country, but then you want to say rock, but it's like in the middle somewhere, you know? I think that's what's interesting about them.
Yeah, I've always kind of, I mean, it's easy just to say like they're classic rock.
Yeah.
Because a lot of classic rock has these like Western things. I don't even want to call it country necessarily. It's just more like Western. It feels very like deserty. Not so much cowboy, but deserty.
Deserty, I like that, yeah.
And I mean, it's funny because there's so many pop culture references to them and their songs. I mean, I think that I always associate them. I like the Eagles, just to put that out there, but like I think it's Big Lebowski where they talk about how the Eagles suck. Like that's like such a big part of the movie. And there's times where like I'm within that culture, I'm just like, oh yeah, like I want to talk shit about the Eagles, but I actually like a lot of their songs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
With this song, were there other songs that you were thinking about? I know you said this is your favorite song, so that automatically, is the reason why it's up there. Were there other songs that you consider from the Eagles that would or could probably go on a funeral playlist?
Witchy Woman, Desperado, Tequila Sunrise, New Kid in Town. Like, it's hard to pick a favorite album. I would say, like, their greatest hits album is, like, my favorite Eagles album, because they have, like, these gems, but, like, on every one of their albums, There's not, like, one album in particular that has the majority of all their good songs that I like. They're all, like, kind of spread out throughout their albums. So it's hard. I would probably just put the whole like their best, best
for the next hour. Just give me nothing but the Eagles.
That's very me. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is when as I started collecting records, and I remember reading about how it is fun to crate dig, but there was always a stigma about like getting greatest hits records, but I feel like you have to.
Yeah, you really do.
And I feel like this is probably one of the few like greatest hits to vinyl collectors who are like, okay, we'll give you a pass on this one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
When thinking about do you hear the Eagles a lot as at funerals? Like I'd imagine probably Desperado, like you mentioned, is probably a big one. Hotel California might be a little weird to play, but I could also see somebody being a rocker fool and being like.
I had this family. They were so awesome. They were these Indian healers, mm-hmm. and the playlist that they had was mostly Eagles,
oh, really?
Journey, a lot of that dad rock, So I think when you have those old hippie people, you're gonna hear a lot of that. But I don't hear the Eagles too much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no. But every now and then, if you have that old hippie rocker head, you're gonna definitely have that on there.
Do you know? Can you remember what is one of the weirdest songs you've heard?
Oh man,
chosen. Not to put anybody on blast, but
I had this one dude who played nothing but Tupac the
really?
whole time, and there was elder people in there, and it's just
yeah,
going off, which was cool. I don't think that was weird, but it was very different because it was just the whole fuck,
yeah.
What else? Trying to think of something that was really weird.
I love hearing about that just because I just think about that to anybody who's not in the know, like someone who's there, who's like a third cousin who hasn't seen them, just showing their respect, who isn't familiar with the person, just being like, "What the hell is like?" And then all of their friends being like, "Oh yeah, like
Yeah,
this is
it makes sense.
yeah, this was a time we would listen to this when we did this or whatever."
Yeah.
One of my like one of the ones I want played, and it's one of those ones like part of me is like, I don't know if I could have this played, but I'm like, I'm gonna be dead, so like I don't have to face any repercussions for requesting this. I want Lemonheads do a cover of Skulls by Misfits.
Oh, okay.
And it's just like this acoustic somber verse. It turns this like punk song into this very like sad song. And the song is about like taking little girls' heads and collecting their skulls. Like I forget that's what it's about.
But acoustic, so it's okay. You know?
But it like in the music video for it is so like it feels so like 70s after school special in the sense that like at the end when they learn their lesson, there's like shots of nature and like the acoustic guitar is playing and he's singing like, you know, take the heads of little girls. You know?
That's cool though, you know?
Yeah.
Let's see. I've had some rocker fools like play like the Metallica and like, you know, shit like that. But I'm trying to think of something that was just like, what? You know, that one song that is always played is I Can Only Imagine. Like, that's like the funeral director's like nightmare. Like you hear that song and sometimes it'll just be on repeat, you know? And it's just, I can only imagine. Have you heard that song?
I don't think so.
Oh my God. It's played like at every funeral. That's another one that's like a funeral banger. But
is it a newer one or is it like an...
It's actually, no, it's a little bit older. It's called I Can Only Imagine. It's like a gospel song.
Oh, okay.
But they play it at every funeral. Like, you know. We're like, God damn it, here it goes again. But I mean, it's good. It's just like it's very typical.
Yeah,
you know? Yeah.
I always think about like one of the first. And I don't want this at my funeral, but I think of "Wind Beneath My Wings" from Beaches. You ever know that you're my hero?
Oh, okay, yeah.
I try not to sing on the podcast because I'm not great unless I'm like 2 tequila shots deep. But yeah, I feel that's like a common funeral song, and I don't hear a lot of people do it. But it's just something I always associate with funerals.
Yeah. And then there's always like that Whitney Houston. I will always love you. That's another one. You got like Leonard Skinner, Simple Man.
Oh yeah.
You know.
I think Tuesday's Gone is more fun.
Right, that is a good one.
That's I think their most underrated song, and maybe because I associate it with Happy Gilmore, like it's in the intro to Happy Gilmore. I don't know.
It is a good song. Tuesday's Gone. Freebird.
Yeah.
I hear that one a lot too. And it's so long too.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I had some friends play that at a talent show. They played the whole version, and I could see people like they're great. They're amazing. They did it. They played it. They did justice. There were like people in the crowd like looking at their watches. Like it's the last song of the night. It's already gone into 3 hours. I was just like, oh man, y'all didn't think about this. I didn't think about this.
They're like, and it's the extended version.
Yeah. But yeah. So were there any songs? I mean, you did mention like songs that you couldn't include on here. Were there some that you really wanted to put that were hard to kind of leave off?
Probably Joy Quinones. There's a song called Don't Tell Me. It was my most played song last year on Spotify. I was like, tell me you're sad without telling me you're sad. You know? I'm like, God damn it. But I think that song just his voice just sounds so retro, but he's, you know, newer. I think that's what I really appreciate about him, or like his lyrics that also go like with his like sound, you know, it's just like smooth. So he's probably one of my favorite artists. He follows me on Instagram. He gave me like a big head because I'm like, oh my God, he follows me. You know? He's like one of my best followers. But yeah, no, he's probably one of my favorite artists. Or anything from like the Sacred Souls, you know, the Monophonics. Anything like that I would probably have like on a playlist, you know.
Is there a song that if whoever was handling your playlist, there's a song that they would put on that would make your spirit like roll their eyes, like really you would put this song? Is there a single song that you're like your friends maybe associate with you that you don't want on there, but you like can't help but like understand why they would put it on there?
Oh my God, let me see. Trying to think. I
have this nightmare that like, because I love Weezer, the the song I hate the most is by them is Beverly Hills.
Oh, okay.
And I have this fear that like someone's gonna be like, oh, Eric likes Weezer, let's put Beverly Hills, and I'm just gonna be like, no, don't. Like, why would you do that?
It's maybe something Drake. Like I'm like
Oh, yeah?
I know. Like I feel like Drake gets so much hate, but he was also my number one artist for 2 years in a row.
I mean, he fumbled the bag, not the money bag, but the like popularity bag with all the shit he's done in the past 6 months.
He's so goofy, but I think that's what I appreciate about him is like he's just like goofy. You know what I mean?
I think that's what he doesn't embrace that anymore.
I know, yeah.
My wife was telling me because she loves Degrassi.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually been binge watching Degrassi.
Really?
Yeah, and she loved Jimmy as a character. And when he came out, she's like, it's so weird hearing that people were like, oh, he's a Lothario and like he's he's like a ladies' man because he's even when he was rapping, I thought he was like a dork, but that's what he like. Like, he made fun of Meek Mill because Meek Mill lost the battle to him. It was like, well, you lost the battle to somebody like me. Like, that was part of, like, the essence of why he won is because he was making fun of him for losing to him.
Yeah.
And it just felt like he has gotten too into his head about being this, like, mob boss character. And this, like,
definitely.
ladies' man.
Definitely. I'm like, you should just go back to being goofy. Like, that works for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think, like, I wouldn't mind hearing Drake, but I feel like if they play Drake, like, everyone else would roll their eyes. You know?
I think there are still some Drake songs I feel kind of, like, are undefeated.
I know.
Best I Ever Had is probably one that people would be like, okay, fine.
That was like his like claim to fame, you know, that first album. But my roommate was also into Degrassi. Like I've never watched a full season, but like coming home, there was always Degrassi on TV, like, you know, in our house. And it's weird because I watched a bunch of episodes, but never like a season together. Like just because it was just always on. Yeah.
I started watching... Like, they had marathons back in, like, 2009, and I liked it, but I never, like, really, gave it the time. But
it's really good.
It is really good. Yeah, that's something. We're on season 14, and, like, I think 14. No, we're season 10. And season 10 has 44 episodes.
There's a lot of episodes per season, and some of the shit they go through, I'm like, y'all are in like middle school.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm like, Jesus Christ. But
yeah.
it's really good. Yeah, I'll give him that. Like the story writing was like, wow.
If you have an hour to kill, I had Wayne on, and we talked about songs that were Degrassi episodes.
Oh,
titles.
I gotta check that out. I gotta check that.
But yeah, no, it just kind of brings us to the end of the playlist. Is there anything you have to plug? Anything you want to shout out?
No, I mean, I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh,
what do you think? Like, one of your songs would be?
Well, that one song by the cover by Lemonheads is one. Josh, who we had on last week, he brought up a song by Roy Orbison called, I think it's called "Life Fades Away." And he was like, Danzig co-wrote this song. And I was like, cool, this is interesting. And I listened to it. I was like, oh, man, this is a good one.
I've never heard that. I gotta check it out.
I had never heard it before he mentioned it. And yeah, it's a banger. It's a good, like, driving off into the sky type of song.
Yeah, I feel like Danzig is another one where his voice is so, like, special. But I don't hear a lot of his music. But when I do, I'm like, wow, you know?
It's funny because he grew up listening to Elvis. You hear Elvis, but he also loved girl groups.
Oh, okay.
And I think learning that about him has made me understand why I love girl groups so much. Like,
yeah.
Talking about like, oh my gosh, what are their names? The Ronettes. Like,
oh yeah,
that era of the '60s. And I feel, and this is something I mentioned before, but the Ronettes might be like the foundation of what rock and roll has become in the past 50 years. But another song is Only in Dreams by Weezer. It's like 7 minutes long. The last half of the song is just like a guitar solo. It's really good. There's some Bright Eyes songs that I feel like I am embarrassed to say it, but at the same time, I'm like, no, this is like me. It has to be. Yeah.
That's what I always tell families. I'm like, do whatever you think that person would like, you know, because it doesn't make sense to do something else, you know, maybe some aspects, you know, but for the, you know, majority of it is like remembering their life, you know?
Yeah. The one Bright Eyes song that I like is my favorite song. It's like my catharsis song. When I would get like dumped in high school, I would drive and just listen to it like full blast.
Classic. Yeah.
It's called Let's Not Shit Ourselves. And it gets a little political in there, but it's like trivial political. It's not like anything specific.
Yeah.
But I love that song. And it starts off where it's just like Connor is just like, can I get a goddamn timpani roll? And like it's so like unnecessarily epic. And it's my favorite Bright Eyes song.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check out Bright Eyes. I haven't heard a lot of them. In high school, I was like pretty emo, but I was more of like Brand New, like Taking Back Sunday, all the like typical like emo bands.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I'll have to check out Bright Eyes.
I feel like, and definitely let me know what you think, but I feel like you have to be a teenager to appreciate at least that era of him. I mean, the stuff he's done recently with like Phoebe Bridgers is pretty universal, but the early stuff is like when he was doing heroin and like squealing and like just stuff like that. It was just very like, oh, I'm so 16. Like,
it's cool. I'll have to check that out. Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. When I thought about this, you were like one of the first people I thought of to like invite on. So.
I feel like I know a lot of music, but I'm like, I feel like I'm not like up there. I feel like you're up there musically, you know, and I'm like down here, so I was a little nervous. So I was like,
no, I mean this was, and it's funny because I don't know what I thought when I asked you about setting up this playlist, but looking back and I'm like, oh, this is totally Gabby. Like, yeah, this is dope.
Yeah, for
cool.
sure.
Well, thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you too.
And thanks for listening, watching Mixtape Stories.